Hello and welcome to another Writer Showcase, everybody. I am very excited to be here as ever with my amazing guests. But first off, we need to bring in the guests. First off, of course, the Bard.
Here's to the bard and a calling me plum. Here's to the beast and the rest of you scum. The cage is locked in and the town is aflame, and it's ours for the taking, though you get the fame.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
See you as ever, Tarek.
Say what?
Good to see you as ever, Tarek.
Oh, good to see you as well, then.
Yep. Alrighty. And we have our sagely Balerion curmudgeon, as ever, burning crap up.
Died horribly. I mean, afternoon greetings. Sorry, I got confused.
Well, it's always a pleasure, Count Balerion. Always a pleasure.
Don't mention it. Thank you.
You mean that literally or figuratively?
Either one. I don't care.
Yeah. Well,
Figuratively.
well, we have one. Well, we currently have one supporting you in the chat.
All right.
Alrighty. Mr. Sparks has not had an intro with us, so I'll just pick one from my collection.
Are you insane?
Yes, I am.
Well,
All right.
Excellent comedic timing.
That's the spirit.
Alrighty. Cool. Hello, Space Junk. Good to see you. Alrighty.
Two people. Sorry.
Three people. We got three people viewing it. But this is always the least popular of the streams that we do.
Yes.
To be perfectly honest.
It's always the kind of the chillest too, though.
Yeah. Alrighty. So, time constraints, or shall I just go clockwise?
Well, let's see. In about an hour, well, a little less than an hour, I go AFK, but that still leaves plenty of time.
Okay, let's just do it. Let's just do clockwise.
All right, so that would leave me first?
Yep.
All right. So, to reiterate where we were last time, Aviana was led to the Raven's Court, and she was brought before the council. They argued whether or not to induct her in. When the Raven Lord, the Chancellor, said, "Well, I'm letting her in. I'm overruling you," and she's in. She also met Cormac, the eponymous Shadow of Tyrion, who is the one who threw her the silver coin, which is what led her on this journey to begin with. And this chapter follows after the end of the council meeting, when Cormac was ordered to send Aviana back to guide Aviana back to where she had started. I'm right here. I just gotta grab the water from across the room before we begin.
Fair enough.
Alrighty, makes sense.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. So that's better. All right. As Aviana traveled through the cavern, she found the silence that surrounded her unnerving. Cormac hadn't spoken a word since the council meeting, and his lack of footsteps did little to comfort her. As they walked, Aviana noticed the man was very dexterous, with his body moving and flowing like water as he ducked and weaved through crevices and around stone spikes, even with the bright torch in his hand lighting their way. Between the man's lack of sound and the amazing way he maneuvered, she started to believe that the man was truly a shadow given flesh. Sorry. As the two entered a large open chamber, Aviana scanned the room and saw what looked to be familiar melted yellow and brown stones. Yet something was off. Looking up, Aviana noticed that the ceiling was full of spikes, larger than any she had encountered, and that the sounds of the river flowing overhead were much stronger than the ones she had heard previously. As she stopped to observe the room, she had fallen so far behind she was just barely in the light of the torch. Suddenly, Cormac stopped. "You're going to be left behind if you don't keep up," Cormac remarked without turning towards her. I can see you just fine," Aviana replied quietly, her voice shaky. "I'm not going to hit you again if that's what you're worried about." Aviana's skull throbbed as she could feel him smacking her in the head all over again. Despite the attempt to relieve the pain by clenching her left hand into a fist. Aviana attempted to relieve the pain by clenching her left hand into a fist, only to cry out as fresh warm blood dripped from her palm onto the floor. "You couldn't have cut yourself in a more inconvenient place. If you're going to cut yourself, never do it on your palms," Cormac scolded. "I didn't know I'd be injuring myself at all," Aviana retorted, trying to contain her frustration. "Regardless, wounds on hands and feet are the slowest to heal due to constant use. They can also be the most dangerous, as they impede your ability to fight or hold a weapon or flee." Aviana whimpered as she stretched her hand straight, warm blood sliding down her arm. Speaking of weapons, an ornate one like yours can be advantageous as a distraction, but it's worthless if the blade is shoddy and weak," Cormac said as starting to walk again, his footsteps still without sound. "Shoddy? The person I bought it from said it was crafted by the finest smiths in Kalen," Aviana retorted, starting to walk again. "Is that what Florin told you? I remember the last institute to purchase a blade that looked identical to yours. I believe Florin told him it was that the finest craftsman from Kalashel created that one. How much did you pay for that blade?" 20 dharma, Aviana answered indignantly. "Can you count to 20? No? Why?" Aviana asked, curious as to what his point was. Cormac shook his head as he continued further into the chamber. "Why does it matter if I can't count to 20? Aviana cried out, stamping her feet as she got close to Cormac. She could hear her tantrum echoing around her, causing several bats to shriek, but she didn't care. Since they had met, all Cormac had done was scold, hurt, and terrify her, and she wasn't going to tolerate it anymore. As soon as she was close enough, Cormac quickly turned around and placed a gloved hand around her mouth and nose. Aviana's eyes went wide as she struggled, only for Cormac to hold her tightly in place with the other arm, feeling as though he could crush her at any moment. A whimper seeped through Cormac's glove as her blood went cold. She closed her eyes tightly and waited for another injury from the man. "Keep your voice down," Cormac commanded as the cave went silent, aside from the occasional dripping of water and river rushing overhead. It was several moments before Cormac finally let her go. Aviana took several deep breaths, her heart still racing as she watched Cormac stand up straight. He turned to her, revealing a stern and annoyed expression before turning around and walking again. "I'm telling you, you were swindled, and if I hadn't told you, you would have never known," Cormac criticized. Aviana slowly followed behind him, trying to find her voice, fidgeting with her fingers as she did. But that's not fair," Aviana protested meekly, sounding more like a child than she was. "Then let this be your first lesson. People will take advantage of you if they think they can. You need to be vigilant and make sure you're aware of what's going around you at all times. In our work, one mistake can be the difference between life and death." Aviana grew silent as she followed Cormac, thinking on his words. She hadn't even considered that the blade broke because it was of poor quality, or the idea that Florin had cheated her. As she walked, she could hear the sound of her last dharma jingling in her pockets as if to mock her. The two continued their journey until they came to a tunnel that the Chancellor and her had entered from. The unlit bronze lantern was still hanging next to the ladder to the surface. Cormac placed the torch in the holder on the wall and began fiddling with the bronze lantern. Aviana paced around this tunnel as Cormac worked, the sound of her footsteps bouncing through the tunnels. "You're going to need to be a lot quieter if you wish to do well with us," Cormac remarked. Aviana frowned and crossed her arms as she watched Cormac continue to fiddle with the lantern. After a moment of waiting, she looked down at her feet and started to pace at a slower speed, gently placing each foot in front of the other. While the new movement did make her steps quieter, she was still unable to replicate the soft steps Cormac could, nor could she walk as fast as him. Suddenly, she heard a hissing from behind her. When she turned, she saw Cormac had extinguished the torch in a nearby puddle. The only light remaining came from the bronze lantern's weaker flame, which was just bright enough to watch Cormac place the torch into the holder and take the lantern into his hand. Before we go, there's something I must explain to you. I'm sure when you noticed that when no one introduced me by my full name when I spoke at your recruitment. When on court business, we use monikers in order to protect our reputation and the reputations of those associated with us. You are never to use a moniker when in public, Cormac said quietly. Aviana nodded. What is your name then? Aviana asked. I will reveal that tomorrow, as that is when we will officially meet. Until then, you are to only refer to me as Sir. Yes, sir, Aviana replied, rolling her eyes. If Cormac saw her rudeness, he didn't address it and began to climb the ladder. With the lantern gripped in his left hand. Aviana took hold of the rungs and began to follow him up. She whimpered slightly as she climbed, her hand aching in agony with each rung she grabbed, leaving little blood marks on each rung. Now do you understand what I was saying? Cormac asked, without looking down at her. Aviana grumbled and bit her cheek in an attempt to quiet her cries of pain, and to hold back the tears threatening to sting her eyes. When Cormac reached the top of the shaft, he hung the lantern on a metal nail and blew out the flame. Aviana watched as darkness consumed them and stifled a cry as she held onto the ladder tightly with both hands, doing her best to ignore the pain. Suddenly, the dim light of night slowly crept into the shaft as Cormac opened the hatch above them and began to turn his head left to right. It's all clear now. Follow me up and be quick about it, Cormac whispered as he pulled himself out of the shaft. Aviana followed as quickly as she could, clambering up the ladder, not wanting to be caught in the darkness again. She yelped as dirt dug into the open wound on her hand as she tried to pull herself out. She felt Cormac's hand grab her tightly before he lifted her out of the shaft onto the ground. He then quickly closed the hatch and scanned the area. What are we doing back at the Dove's Branch? Aviana asked. There are a few things I need to do before I dismiss you for the night, Cormac replied. Looking around one last time. Go to the door. I'll meet you there in a moment. Aviana walked towards the door and stood next to it. When she turned, she saw Cormac replacing the dirt over the now exposed hatch. He then walked away from it towards the end of the lot before walking towards her again. Aviana noticed that though he was walking silently, he was leaving footprints behind in the dirt. Why did you do that? Aviana asked Cormac as he came close again. We don't want someone finding the entrance to the tunnels, or asking why footprints are disappearing halfway through the yard, Cormac answered as he turned the brass knob to the door. Is that why you cleared the snow from the yard too? Cormac raised an eyebrow. Very astute. That, and if there is too much snow, it makes it impossible to open the hatch from below. Who covered the tracks when I went through the first time with the Chancellor? The doorman, Cormac answered as he opened the door, allowing the two of them to walk into the Dove's Branch. You go and wait in the foyer. I need to get changed, Cormac commanded as he ascended the staircase to the second floor. Aviana walked into the foyer expecting to see the doorman, but found herself alone. The room was quiet except for the occasional pop and crackling of wood in the fireplace. She hadn't realized how cold the tunnels were or how damp her clothes felt until she was standing in the warm room, her body shaking. She walked over to the fireplace and placed her hands near the flames. While the roaring flames did bring relief, they also brought back the throbbing pains on the cuts on her arms, leg, and hand. As her exhaustion was starting to take her, she took a stool from a table nearby and dragged it towards the fireplace and sat down. She hunched forward, getting as much of her body near the fire as possible as her long black bangs hung in her face. She sat by the fire long enough to where she was warm enough to move freely again, and for her clothes to dry. Suddenly, she heard footsteps, and when she turned, she saw Cormac, now dressed completely different. His black armor was replaced by simple street clothes, a green long-sleeve wool shirt, a pair of simple brown pants, and boots. His hands were now covered in thick brown gloves, and around his neck, a brown cloak with the hood down. Don't get comfortable. You're going to have to leave, Cormac said, walking towards her. In his hand, she noticed a bucket with a cloth and what looked like to be the bandages Raquela used to tend to her wounds. I can't stay here? Aviana asked, dreading the idea of going back outside into the cold. This isn't an inn, Cormac replied. Then why are there bedrooms upstairs? Cormac didn't answer as he took a stool and sat in front of her, the man's large frame towering over her as he looked down. Open your hand. Aviana slowly opened her palm and saw the remains of dried dark red blood all over her hand and arm, along with bright red blood oozing from the wound. The dirt had gotten into the cut and was making it itchy, almost taunting her to scratch. Cormac took her hand and held it as he dipped the cloth into the bucket and began to scrub at the wound, causing Aviana to yelp out and jump in pain. We keep beds here for when an agent is wounded and can't be moved safely, or on the occasion one of our allies needs shelter, Cormac explained as he cleaned the cut on her hand, digging the cloth into the injury as Aviana cried out meekly. Do I not count as wounded? Aviana responded. No, those beds are reserved for those seriously injured. Aviana was about to press the issue when she noticed Cormac giving her a glare and decided to keep her mouth shut. She turned away from the man and winced as he wrapped her hand in a bandage. Tomorrow at dawn, you are to meet me at the bridge to the wards. From there, I will take you to our training grounds, Cormac said, placing the bloodied rag in the bucket. Aviana nodded when her stomach began to growl. The sound was so loud that even Cormac stopped and raised an eyebrow. And make sure you have something to eat. It will be a very taxing day. At the mention of eating, Aviana's stomach growled louder. All the jerky she had eaten before had barely satiated her. And after a night of fighting, walking through tunnels, and being injured, she felt hungrier than she had ever been. I don't have any. Rats ate all my food, and all I have is one dharma, Aviana replied, lowering her head, feeling ashamed that she couldn't even perform the simple task of eating for her new employers. Without a word, Cormac got up and walked over to the kitchen area. Aviana watched as he searched through various shelves and cabinets, throwing various items into a brown burlap bag. After several moments, Cormac returned and dropped the now heavy bag into her lap. This will be the only charity I provide you. As of tomorrow, you will have to earn everything I give you, whether it be lessons, food, or dharma. I will give you instruction, but it will be up to you to put that instruction to use. Aviana opened the bag and her jaw nearly dropped. Inside was a wide variety of items: jerky, cheese, bread, grapes, carrots, and even some apples down at the bottom. All of it looked fresh and smelled delicious. She was so much so that she was tempted to gorge herself right then and there. In the end, she reluctantly closed the bag and kept it on her lap. Thank you so much, sir. I promise I will do my very best, she replied, more grateful than words could ever express. She could have sworn that for the briefest of moments, a proud smile had crept onto Cormac's lips, but disappeared before she could be sure. Now you must go. I expect you to be on the bridge to the wards at dawn tomorrow. Yes, sir. Thank you again, sir, Aviana replied, ignoring her body's complaints as she got up out of her seat and bowed. She turned and walked towards the door with the sack of food held securely in her right hand. When she opened the door to the street, a cold wind blasted onto her face in stark contrast with the warmth that was inside the dove's branch. She continued out the door, braving the icy cold winds as she held her cloak close to her body. Though the air was cold and chomped at her face, she felt oddly warm inside, a feeling that stayed with her all the way back to the storehouse. And that's it.
That was quick. Okay. Very interesting. Like, I'm definitely seeing more of the story take shape here.
All right.
I like the dialogue and the characterization, especially towards the end, where it gets a little bit more subtle, where it seems that Cormac isn't as much of a jerk as he seemed to be earlier. So I like that little touch.
I actually got to thank Sparks quite a bit for this chapter, because he was the one who reminded me that getting a cut on your hand, especially like when you slice it across the palm, is probably one of the worst places to get a cut, since, you know, it's hard to heal with the way you're moving, the way you use it constantly.
Yeah, I mean, it's all very well to teach her and all that, but there are reasonable limits. There were a few word choices and phrasing here or there. I can't remember all of them. There was something about an annoyed expression where I thought just with an annoyed expression would have been good enough, and it was a bit more complicated than that. And there was a bunch of places like, was it Carmack criticized or something? There were some places where just said would have been good enough.
No, like I get that, but the thing is that normally, and I know you guys probably know this, I like to use a lot of add like a lot of descriptors whenever I'm doing anything, whether it was conversation or stuff like that. And this one I got to give credit to Becca for. She said that in this chapter, it should be like she should know she's being criticized, but she shouldn't be able to gauge his reaction at all because Aviana does not know what to make of this guy. He is a total mystery to her.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'd use an adverb or something instead.
No. Like that's the point. You're not supposed to because she doesn't know how to describe what he's doing. Whole book's from her perspective.
Yeah, she's limited in terms of both education and context.
Yeah, context. Well, to me, it didn't sound quite natural to me. So, and then the reader gets a little distracted.
I'm kind of with Tarek, though. I would rather use criticized instead of said.
Well, it doesn't have to be said necessarily, but generally less is more when you're talking about when you're just saying so and so said this, so and so said that. You don't even need said sometimes. You can just. Well, I think I would find a different way of phrasing it.
Your thoughts, Spark?
So I have read a few stories where it's centered around a kid character, and it's kind of, and I noticed I've gotten used to them acting more mature than they should be, and I don't like that when I realized it. So it's definitely refreshing to have a character that sounds more like a kid as they should, but it isn't to an annoying degree. So I think you've got her maturity down pretty well.
One of the interesting thing is like when I first wrote this, this went through like 2 rewrites because I did not like the way it was turning out. And I have to thank Becca for her help here with sort of getting this down right. If you notice, she's acting completely different when dealing with Cormac. She's getting angry when normally she, like at first, she's getting irritated. She's acting like a child. She's throwing a tantrum because she's been led by the nose all night. And she still has no idea what she's doing here. And she has somebody who's supposed to be teaching her. And she's like, well, what's the deal here? What am I supposed to be doing here? And then he just kind of, he kind of puts the fear of God into her. And we go back to like the way she normally acts just because she's scared.
Yeah. I mean, I remember that with the Archmage too, because she was acting all humble and then she got angry because he was being kind of a jerk. So then she got angry. So she'll do that sometimes before. She's done that before, so it's consistent.
Yeah. I also need to bring on our final guest.
Beginning, middle, end. Facts, details, condense, plot, tell it.
Hey, Aspiring.
Hello.
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 How you doing?
Hmm?
How you doing?
I'm sleepy. I don't wake up at these times. Why do you have to do this at 12, for Lord's sake? If you just did this at 3 in the morning, I'd still be up.
What time is it over there?
Currently 12:30
AM or after midnight or afternoon?
p.m. Admittedly, I can't do it after midnight because my parents would actually murder me.
Oh, that would be
my
interesting.
sister.
Oh, that would be interesting, but a little bit annoying though.
Yeah, it is kind of annoying to be dead.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Unless you're Dracula dead and loving it. At that point it's fine.
I tried it. It was a drag.
If I go to heaven, then maybe I'll just stay there. I'm sure they must have some good libraries.
Yeah, they got the best library, I imagine. It is heaven after all, and all dogs go to heaven, as we know.
Hey, Tara, can I also say I like the fact how he was able to defuse her without yelling?
Like I said, he put the fear of God into her. That's the way I like to think of it.
Oh, I like the voices you give them too.
The difference here, and I just want to explain this real quick, the difference between here and the Archmage thing is that when you have the Archmage thing, she knows immediately she fucked up when she starts yelling at him. But here, she's kind of in the unknown. She doesn't know how she's going to react, but she's tired, it's late, and she's hurt. So she's going to act like any child would. Like, I want to go home. I want to go to bed. I'm sick of this shit.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't act much better if in a similar situation, if we're honest. I mean, if we're tired, hungry, and we've wounded our hand and we're getting infected, we're going to be grumpy too.
I'm sick of this horse buggery that's going on around me. Please give me some actual answers.
Yeah, and preferably food too.
Yes, always the food.
Did you happen to have anything to say aspiring, or did you get in too late?
Got in too late.
That's all right. All right, so I guess we move on to Balerion then, unless anybody else has something else they want to say.
No, I'm okay. Hey, it's pretty straightforward. I'm interested to see where this goes. I'm seeing. I definitely agree with everybody here that like the child maturity definitely is something that you nailed quite well here. That's my only other comment.
I really appreciate that. That was one of the things I was most worried about.
Oh yeah, that bit's fine.
Communist rabbit time.
Yeah, it's a pity that Carl Saylor not here. Really is.
Yeah.
Did one of my characters draw this?
Maybe. Does Aviana draw? Probably not. She just can't even count.
Doesn't mean she can't draw.
True.
Cavemen could draw, and they didn't know math.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm sure they could count, though.
However,
I'm sure
she didn't draw this because I don't think she'd be able to spell post-colonialization.
Can you
I don't
count
think-
if you don't have any numbers?
It's spelled wrong anyway.
I was about to say, it looks like it's spelt wrong anyways.
It's spelled with a Z. Yeah. So you can see all that stuff. So if I go to a different window, you can still see it, right?
But could
No.
she spell post?
So you just shared your entire screen. So now we're not seeing the painting anymore.
I don't remember doing that. Why is this thing such a mess?
I have no idea. I think maybe you just share a specific tab.
That's what I was trying to do. I don't know why these things never work properly. It's so annoying.
It might be you accidentally pressed the sharing your entire window thing by accident. Since that's what I'm seeing right now.
God.
I think my eyes would tick if I had that many tabs open.
All right.
Well,
Let me try this.
It's funny you mentioned that, Spark, because I was doing research on fishing yesterday for what I was writing, and I had like just as many tabs looking at 14th, 13th century fishing.
Jesus
well, that's
Christ.
interesting. What are you seeing now?
Just the picture.
Just the picture.
Yeah, we do see the picture, but it's going to change in a few seconds to your thing when you click on the tab. I think what you need to do is you need to stop sharing altogether, and then just restart with just the tab that you want to share.
I have no idea. I'm just gonna read this stupid thing. You saw it. It's good enough. It used to work fine. I don't know what it is. It just this thing is so stupid. Anyway, whatever. Don't mind me. I'm just throwing another computer tantrum. Don't mind me. We're fine. Okay. So we're with the so-called quote communist end quote rabbits, and there are a couple of double agents who are there because they want to get does, and they want to take does to their own war, and because they didn't bring any does with them because reasons, because that's what happened in the original that this is based on, because reasons. So. So Big's like wow, and sees like 3 or 4 does. One of them was Dandelion, but in a clever disguise, because aesthetics like does stuff to identity, dudes, and called herself Daradinskaya. And she was talking to another doe that wear jeans and lipstick and had a t-shirt that said, "The Trix Rabbit rules," and that was supposed to be totally like Darren, because the Trix Rabbit's a rabbit list. And Captain Chevy's like, "Yo, Nelly Hee-ha, you getting on with your new friends?" And she's like, "LOL, exclamation, dude, you will get on too, LOL, dude, like Captain Molotov, that dude that got LOL killed by a fox. He got on. He got it. He got on. Get it. OMG. WTF. LOL. Exclamation. Patrol, dude. And she popped her bubble grass, and because she was only a few months old, they like chewing grass, spitting it out in big bubbles. They think that's like way cool. It makes them modern and youth culture. But hip is totally exploded. That's why lately I wear crinoline to undermine the dominant notion of hip. Pardon me, I'm drinking too. And Big's like, WTF. And Chevy's like, yeah, there's been some trouble with does lately, and they do simulstat and stuff, and Nelly Hee-ha thinks they're like way cool. So she keeps dissing us, kind of like a carnivalesque escape valve that in the end actually reinforces our dominance. But I still want you watch the does, and especially Daradinskaya, she keeps quoting clever theorists. It's probably just stupid doe stuff, but you never know if subversive stuff lurks under academic crap. Cool, says Bigwig. What's the rules for getting it on with does? We're officers, so power structures say we get any does we want. There's just 3 of us, owls, that is officers in the mark, and plenty of does, just not in other marks. It's rude. And it's rude to the officers there. Plus, you can't do it in other marks without pauper anyways, says Chevy. Awesome, says Big. And the doe named, I forget what, but it was long. It had a lot of Z's and like THs in it. We'll just like call her Hee-hee because she begun with an H. Is doing a poem stuff, and she's like, uh-oh. Uh-oh, this bit's scary. Long ago, stuff ruled because we could do what we liked. Although what you like is conditioned and stuff, but now we can't, so life sucks. Long ago, the power structures let us mate with whoever we wanted, but now the officers get first dibs, and then whoever isn't good with the powers. So my love life is crap. Yeah, life totally sucks. Because the power structures make me sick. And life won't not... Sorry. Sorry. Help. Oh no. This is bad form, I beg your pardon. And life won't not suck again. So I'm going to totally go angsty and emo and internalize my own oppression. That's deep because the juncture I'm proposing is totally extreme. It's a location where the praxis of third world feminism majorly links up and crisscrosses with post-colonial theories of culture to a shared comprehension of oppositional consciousness, because, like Sheila Sandoval says Sarah Dandelion. And Bigwig's like, yeah, I love you. What's your names? I only know Nelly Haha and Derry Denskaya. And they're like, I'm Thesis Thing. I'm Hee Hee. Hee Hee, then you're the one who, never mind, says Big. And Dara Dandelion's like, LOL. And Big is like, wow, she's totally shell-shocked and angst city and stuff like her life must totally weigh major sucks. And Nelly Haha's like, can we go, sir? Dude, officers like so over power structures us. WTF, OMG, LOL, exclamation mark. You can totally have too much of a bad thing. LOL, WTF, OMG, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. And she popped her bubble grass so like splattered all over the burrow, and she's kind of immature, dudes. And she's like, I rock, sir, because I'm hanging out with the cool set. Okay, says Big. And she's like, to the other does, OMG, WTF, what a total lamer. LOL, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, blah, 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 blah. Let's see. How long have I been at it? Just a few minutes, right?
I think about 6.
Okay, so I'll do another, and I'll do a little bit more then. We're in chapter 4. We've moved on to chapter 14. Like, dudes, this Watership Mall chapter is totally rocks are awesome, dudes. OMG! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Blah blah blah. Because it got deep epistemology. Wow. Then Bigwig wandered around talking to sentries and stuff. They're like, wow, being officers rules. And if we get to be officers, like totally, like if we get promotion, like that would totally rocks. Because they get their own burrows called dachas and stuff. So Big says, bring Hee Hee to my burrow. And they did, and she's like, it's not my mating season, dude, sir. And he's like, don't play dumb. I know who Dara Dinskaya is. She's from our warren, and I know all about Captain Holly, too. And she's like, wow, what's the epistemology that made you know that? WTF. And he's like, didn't Dara Dinskaya tell you there's a secret agent? And she's like, yeah, but she's coy on who it is. She's mostly teaching us theory. Once she's like, it's General Woundworthoff, which would majorly contradict any paradigm we know. That's why Nelly's like, OMG, WTF, LO. And he's like, I can totally guess. So you know the robots got away. And she's like, yeah, I guess that. It's hard to tell stuff from Jaredinskaya because her conversation is like way over our heads. Especially Nelly, she likes to throw in weird theory words. She's like, I need to subaltern Raka and stuff. And he's like, yeah. Anyway, when we're ready to scram, we send news by a seagull who talks in fake German. But how do you know I'm not a Politburo spy? And she's like, Dara Danskaya told us you got a friend with psychic powers. So do I. I see lots of human stuff, and a rope, and a dog, and a rabbit driving a car because the means of production are so, you know. But I'm talking crap. My power sucks in alfalfa because the historical materialism gets me down. And she's like, wow, my friend talks just like that, only more sarcastic and and never shuts up when Dari Dandelion's not talking. And then Dari Dandelion turns up, and Big and Hee-Haw are like, how did you get here? And she's like, LOL, I just rewrote the paradigm, and I fooled the officers, but I don't want to get into details. But if you and Thesis Thang were leaders of Doe Revolt, how come they put you together? And, pardon me, he's like, the orders were like 2 for each marks, but they didn't say which 2, so they're like, whatever. Then Blackarov, he was our advisor, but then we petitioned the Politburo. They don't let us talk to him anymore, and he like runned away, but they got at him, and he got majorly purged. So how many does would join us? Not that I'm doing a phallogocentric thing where it's all about reducing stuff to quantifiable bits, but like, said Dara Dandelion. Oh, loads. But we mustn't tell them till we're ready, because no one can keep secrets here. It's a total panopticon, dudes. We'll just tell Thesis Thang, and especially not Nellie. She so doesn't get the inherent violence in the system, dudes, says Hee. Yeah, and the birds fighting on our side, but I can't explain all the plan because your worldview doesn't have the necessary concepts. Like, have you seen a river? Said Dara Dandelion, and he's like, what's a river? Never mind, she's just playing with your mind. You do what we say and it'll all be cool, says Big. And we're bringing Blackarov with us because he's oppressed. Pardon me? Yeah, and he's so good looking, too. Like, dissidents rejecting the dominant paradigm is a turn on, says Dara Dandelion. That puts into question constructing sentences. Like, whoa, he's always guarded by Hraka, that secret police, and Captain will get you, says Hee. And Big's like, kill. Then I get to prove my machismo. We'd better get back now. They'll wonder why you are so long with 2 does who aren't even in mating season. LOL! Exclamation mark. Blah, 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 said Dara Dandelion. And Bigwig is like, please don't do that. It reminds me of Nellie Haha and her bad Marxist perfume. And I think that will do. That's probably as much as anyone can take it in one go anyway.
I am always perpetually amazed by your capacities. What they are for, I will leave up to the audience and for you to decide.
So I was able to understand that it was a group of rabbits who are somehow Marxist, but also having Valley Girl accents, and they were trying to get does. But the rest, I kind of just couldn't follow along with it a bit because my brain kind of short circuits with Valley Girl dialogue.
Don't try to follow it too closely. I mean, I gave you a little précis at the beginning, and that's pretty much all you need to know. The Marxists are the rabbits who run the war, and these guys are secret agents, so they're not the Marxists. And of course, the Marxists aren't real Marxists, as Carl Saylor will remind us if he were here.
It's essentially a whole lot of this.
Stop bringing logic into a movie! Random incoherent juvenile shit happens, things explode, and people empty their wallets to see it!
Yeah, however, there's a method to my madness.
Oh, there undoubtedly is. It's very entertaining, to say the least. But it's still mad. It's just not a gross madness like mine is frequently.
It's not bad, it's brilliant.
Oh no, it is completely brilliant. There's nothing wrong with it. is a work of amazing parody and satire.
Thank you, my good people. Thank you.
Okay, don't get too big of an ego, mate.
Isn't anyone going to say they're traumatized?
Man, I checked out, man. I have no idea what you're doing anymore. At this point, whenever you read, it's like I took a hit of acid and I have no idea what's happening. So I just wait for the trip to end and go, whoa.
You act like I can actually comprehend what the fuck you just read.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
my brain just goes into twists and then it's done. I don't actually register what the fuck you wrote.
Maybe, yeah.
I actually agree with Space Junk. That was like listening to a pretentious college humanities student ranting.
Good.
Yeah, that's great.
Good. That's not too far off, actually.
Nice.
Oh, the humanity.
Alrighty. Well, I believe it is our good friend Spark's turn.
All right. So, this is an original piece, and the reason why I made this is because I'm part of a certain thing that is hoping to take the realities of retail into our more fantastical parts of fantasy. And so, this is the story of a dwarven realtor who is known for renovating, and he's getting a certain task by, oddly enough, a woman with a Minnesota accent. All right, I'm gonna try and do the dwarven accent and the Minnesotan accent. The dwarven one's gonna be more Scottish, based on what I was able to find, but it's not gonna be the best, and I'm not good at trying to do voices, so we'll just see how it goes. All right. A hero and a demon lord? Are you bonkers? Oh yeah, I have to get to a shindig with the Aqua Lords, so I'm gonna need to pick up those contracts, darling. Gron Stonebreaker stared at his cell phone, his hand shaking from rage, the reddening of his face matching the mane and beard on his head, scrunched eyes boring into the name on the screen, as if his glare would kill the woman on the other end of the line. You're hacking at an empty vein if you think I'll take your word. The lads and I have a holiday off. Well, that's a shame. Of course, I don't have a problem handling the clients, but it means I miss chatting up the aqua loads about a certain dwarven colleague. The dwarf stood still at that. The gleam in his eyes changed from rage to interest. Go on, he finally ground out. This party in particular is at the Seabed Chateau, and dozens of those fine ocean fellas are going to be attending. You know them types, wanting landfront property, and I could mention you as a certain colleague of mine who knows how to get a good renovation done. Wouldn't be able to do it if I had those jobs, though, don't you know? Gron furrowed his brows, and his beard twitched from frowning. All right, you witch. Me and the Boyles will take these clients. Thank you, Gron, dear. I'll send you the details. The Minnesota woman hung up, and unconsciously, Gron relaxed his tense posture. An avalanche crashing above his head sounded better than that harpy's voice. The dwarven realtor pinched his bulbous nose and sighed, then strode with purpose into the ale hall, where the fellow dwarves that made up his crew sat around a circular table, enjoying their breakfast pints. Since they used to have the week off, Grond had made a schedule of feasting, fighting, and other lollygagging activities. They had been too immersed in their drinks and mirth to notice their boss's approach. Molly, his coal-biting woodworker, had even stolen and emptied his ale while he was away, taking that blasted call. Grond used his anger from that to put extra weight into slamming a fist against the table multiple times, the stone vibrating with each blow. His workers ceased and turned to him immediately, not amused by the interruption. "Listen up, laddies. Plans changed. We've got some last-minute assignments for the day." This was met with groans and shouted protest. Grond shook his head and again slammed his fist against the table, this time with enough force for their pints to shake dangerously. The others stopped gabbling like chickens to protectively clutch their drinks while he crossed his arms across his chest, staring them down. "Aye, I know. Shut your traps. That Minnesota woman dumped them on me, but she didn't give me an empty cart for it. I recall you lads harping on me to grab different jobs. Well, she's gonna smooth talk some of them kelp lot into picking us some fork for their own turf. We just have to work the same property for one of those gold-smooching human boils and them run-of-the-mill dark lodies. The usual for your lot. That sound right by ye?" They grumbled and mumbled again, but with less fervor and more acceptance this time. Grond nodded and continued. "Nolan, I'll give you the coordinates to that lot. From the looks of it, we're only an hour the way. The rest of you check your stores and make sure we have the materials for the specifications. Before that, you gobblers can finish your drinks." Grond swiftly swiped the remaining pint from Molly, gulped it down in one motion, and stoically looked at the enraged dwarf. "Go check the pine and oak stores, you guzzler." Unlike his cursed human co-worker, Grond and his men did not have a puny automated metal cart on wheels. Instead, what rumbled through the countryside was a behemoth that defied any natural terrain presenting an obstacle to it by plowing through by sheer force. The mobile mountain. It had an unblemished steel hull propelled by steam-powered metal wheels. The front of the hull narrowed into a firm ram, cutting through any earth that impeding the titan of a vehicle. The single long structure topped the length of the hull, made of similar material on it. On the structure were two stocky exhaust tubes that bellowed white steam from them, the engine producing the vapor, working in perfect order to propel the vehicle. "It better," thought Grond, as he stood on the bow. He had helped service the bloody contraption last week, and could still smell exhaust oil in his beard. His thoughts turned from past annoyance to his current project, the location they were now in sight of as the mountain approached it. A medium-sized stone fortress nestled in the valley of a mountain range. The walls curved through the keep in a protective embrace. Steeple towers perched along them where each section of the wall met the next. The only entrances, one main and two sides on the far ends, led into the open grounds between the walls and the keep. The stone of the fortress looked far from the days it was laid down, but still held firm. Few vines or weeds plagued the structures. Gradually, the steel titan came to a halt close by, wheels creaking and engine puttering. As these sounds died down, a new one replaced them. A large panel on the mountain's left hull peeled from it and lowered down to form a ramp to the ground. Sliding down, it came dozens of carts full of materials, different raw woods, metals, paints, and tools organized neatly into separate containers. One larger cart carried the four dwarves of Grond's crew, Molly the woodworker and damn drink stealer, Nullum the mountain's driver and quartermaster, Vorel the interior decorator and painter, and finally Grunt the smith and engineer. The quartet heaved themselves out of their ride and set to their task. The property structure would serve as a good foundation, but that didn't mean he and the lads wouldn't have a rubble of work to get done before the first client arrived. Grond nodded with satisfaction at their preparation and strode back indoors. After calling the office to give a terse update, he changed into his working outfit, a squat pair of pants and overalls, to join his crew in the work. A crew boss that wasn't willing to sweat wasn't worth his pick after all. And there's more to it, but I'm going to separate that as a part 2, since that one is a lot less finished, and I didn't want to take up too much time.
Jesus Christ, man. Well done.
Yeah, very, very, very good.
What, you're done already?
Description. Yeah, we're blazing through today. Apparently,
Very well done, Spark. I do need to arrange that meeting. I think I'm going to do it this weekend so we can finally nail down those world building notes for this. But again, very good start on this.
Oh, thank you.
I do like the dwarf lingo.
Oh, it was. I mostly based it on a Scottish text translator that I found, but I also used a dwarven one to try and do it. It's not what I have down in text is not to the extent it could be, but I didn't want to confuse myself too much by trying to read it out loud and trying to get the accent right. So, yeah, there's just a lot of missing D sounds and A sounds replacing T's.
Your voice wasn't half bad.
yeah, it wasn't that bad.
Tarek, what did you think of the Minnesota woman that I've had for her so far?
So far it seems fine. What I mean by that is, yeah, that she would act that kind of friendly. She would be willing to make a deal with her other coworkers like that. Like, hey, if you do this for me, I'll do this for you. That is the kind of face she would put on as a real estate worker, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. I just thought that she was pretty conniving and that she would get
She
other
is.
people to
She
do that.
is. You'll see how when I finally get to writing my own.
And of course, he despises that.
Well,
Two-faced bitch.
Realtors are terrible, terrible people in many respects.
That
What?
was part of the reason why this kind of works. Because, like, when I was coming up with this, I was like, real estate VP. I've met several real estate people. Yeah, they're pretty terrible people.
Yeah, lots of corruption, all that going on there. So basically, the realtors are the villains.
Yeah, not really. They're just the main
They're
characters.
the protagonist.
Yeah.
Grond, as you can see, he definitely fits that, but he's not two-faced. He'll pretty much tell you how he feels.
That's because he's a dwarf. I don't know why we started letting dwarves in this industry.
Because he's damn good at what he does.
There goes the neighborhood.
Exactly.
It's just next thing you know, they're demanding representation and stuff, which is disgusting. Pardon me. Don't have.
Oh, if we start letting if we start letting dwarves in, then they'll start wanting rights. They'll want to be paid. They'll want benefits, and we just can't afford that. No, we can't.
Oh, fair enough. Now I'm on their side. I mean, now I'm on the realtor's side.
Or worst of all, they may start a union.
No, please, no.
What did you think about the vehicle? Because
I actually thought that was really clever. I gotta give you points for that. I genuinely thought that was clever.
It is very clever. It kind of feels like like Onward or a better version of Bright. If anybody has seen Bright, I'd be interested to do a commentary and live stream on it. I think it might be interesting.
One of the jokes we had is because this is Isekai Realty. My character has like a Toyota or a Camry, like a Toyota Camry or something, like a 1999 car in a medieval world, and that's how she gets from job to job, while all the other guys has like their own transportation. So again, Spark, I gotta give you credit. Well played.
So, what kind of a car would Aviana drive?
It's not the same world. But I like to imagine she'd have a Ford GT.
Yeah, probably something cheap.
No, a Ford GT is super expensive.
She get a little bug.
She got sold.
She sold the keys.
Really yeah, true. I was thinking she just like she bought it like she bought the knife thingy.
She bought a really shitty one from a shady dealership. Apparently, she never learned the lesson that her teacher was trying to give her.
That's tragic.
Mhm. This is a tragic moment in the story.
Yes, it is. She doesn't
yes.
learn.
Oh yeah, this is grimdark.
Indeed.
But really good start. Really good start, Spark, to this.
Oh, thank you. I'll
Indeed.
try and get the second part out in a couple weeks, but I got another thing where I won't be able to.
It's fine. This is really this whole project, as you've seen, is really slow going.
Yep.
Alrighty. So, Mr. Aspiring, it is your turn.
Goody. Okay, so recap, because I have a feeling none of you remember what the fuck's happened in the past few chapters. Triple, my MC, is been just kind of being integrated in the squad. Last chapter, she was getting introduced to the last member of the squad she hadn't met, Carol, the pilot. And this chapter is finally where I explain their upcoming operation that's been foreshadowed in the past few chapters. The next few days passed by uneventfully, but there was a feeling of tension throughout the crew. After a medical examination, which didn't reveal anything of note besides some fatigue, Will started cramming more into his lessons, his behavior becoming more agitated. He stopped indulging her questions after the lectures, handing her off to Serial and secluding himself in his quarters. In addition to that, Will, along with Serial and Uriel, had started spending more time in Jeffrey's quarters. When she questioned Carol about it, she had told her that they were coordinating with other squads for the upcoming operation. She refused to tell her anything more, no matter how much Triple pried. Her excitement for Will's lessons had dampened, instead replaced with anxiety. Whether that was because of the operation, the mysterious test, or Will's behavior, she didn't know. She started glancing at the time, a part of her wanting the lectures to end sooner, while another part hoped he kept going so she would be as prepared as she could be. Will had noticed the change, but the duality of her turmoil confused him, something she had been able to sense despite Will's strange resistance to her ability to feel others' emotions. A snap of fingers made Triple jump, and she blushed furiously as Will gave her a displeased look, his eyebrows in a tight line. She had started drifting away again. She'd been doing that ever since she overheard Will and Jeffrey's argument, where she would just start getting so absorbed in her contemplations that the world around her would just fade away. As Will continued his lecture, Triple took a quick glimpse at the time and silently inhaled through her teeth. She had been nodding off for almost a half hour. A half hour of Will's preparation wasted. Thankfully, the nightmares no longer came until she was deep into her sleep, so she hadn't had any incidents in front of him like she had with Serial. She had even been able to get some small amount of rest with that blessing, but it wasn't enough to take away the drowsiness that weighed on her every waking hour. Will suddenly let out a frustrated sigh. You're doing it again. It took her a moment to realize he was talking about her drifting off. She bowed her head, unable to come up with an excuse. Go to your quarters and rest up. We're done for today. Her head snapped up. But no, he shouted, making her flinch away. I have tolerated your lapses, but today I need you rested. You will go to your quarters and sleep, he ordered, swinging his arm to point to the door. I can't, she burst out. Will's eyes narrowed, and Triple started to panic until she sensed that he wasn't angry, but curious. Why, he asked, his voice calm. Triple pressed her lips together, suddenly at a loss of words. She knew what to say, but couldn't bring herself to. Will clasped his hands behind him as he walked toward her. Triple, in these past few days, you've shown signs of major lack of sleep, and I have the feeling the only thing that is keeping you on your feet are your shape-shifting abilities. So, are you going to tell me what's happening or not? Triple raised her eyes before lowering them again in shame. I know about your fits. Triple tensed up, her eyes widening as her jaw tightened. Serial told you, she said, not really asking. Her voice sounded almost like a growl, surprising her. She hadn't expected to get so angry at Serial for sharing that with Will. Will nodded, his lip curled. She sensed disappointment for him, and Will Triple wished she could use her abilities to make herself disappear. Be thankful she did. It's the only reason I've given you an admonishment for your lack of attention. But I need you to tell me what's happening, because physically you're fine. You're sore in various spots, but other than that, Will shrugged, shaking his head. Nothing. Triple took a deep breath before softly saying, I have been having these nightmares. Of what's in? Will guessed. She nodded. Why didn't you bring this up to me sooner? If this was such a problem, I could have put you to sleep with the drug I first used on you when you boarded this ship. Would have slept like a baby. It's not a normal nightmare, she said, standing up and pacing. I don't know how to explain it, but the nightmares feel more real, like I'm truly experiencing what's happening. When I wake up, I can still feel some of the effects. Like, when I left a rock on my shoulder too long, that shoulder will be sore when I wake up. I always wake up feeling hot and drenched and sweated, and the pain during the nightmares feels... She shuddered. Turning back to him, she saw Will's expression had softened. You ever consider that this could have done permanent harm to you? She nodded, her hand reflexively reaching for her throat, which still felt a bit hoarse. Will sighed, dragging his hand across his face, stretching his eyes. You are an idiot. You understand that? She nodded, sitting back down. It didn't feel right to be standing up in front of them at that moment. Good. From now on, you will bring everything unusual, and I mean everything, to me or Serial. Now what's happening to you is that your abilities are mentally enhancing the experience of your nightmares. All mind hosts have this problem eventually. They repeat sensations you've previously experienced and create what is essentially a simulation in your head. Then why didn't they happen before? During her time in the medical bay, she hadn't had any of these nightmares. She at first thought her mind was busy assimilating information from the rest of the crew, but the nightmares hadn't stopped her collecting information, at least not directly. Her lack of sleep caused by the nightmares was a different story. Will shrugged. I don't know. Maybe the drugs we used on you helped. Maybe your healing had something to do with it. Or maybe there isn't any real explanation for when they started. Mind host abilities are the most finicky of them. You don't believe that? Will pursed his lips, nodding. No, not completely. Even mind host abilities follow a certain train of logic. And the fact that they are affecting you physically is strange, though your shapeshifting could explain that. So, how do I stop them? There is a way, right? Triple asked, a twinge of desperation in her voice. Not that I know of, Wood said carefully. The nightmares might be something you have to deal with all your life. Oddly enough, mind host abilities tend to do more to enhance mental trauma than suppress it. However, they may fade away naturally, and I'm curious to see if the drug used on you actually did help. Couldn't we try that now? Will glanced at the door. I'd love to, but I don't think we will have the time today. Why wouldn't we? Will looked at her, then back at the door. Opening the door, he did a quick check outside before closing it and leading in close to her. Okay, if anyone asks, I haven't told you anything. Since you're enlisted, you're technically a rank too low to be privy to details on this operation. But yes, the operation is today, not that long from now, in fact. If I put you into a medically induced sleep now, we wouldn't be able to wake you up by the time we reached. She started to hyperventilate, but closing her eyes, Triple forced herself to keep calm. She managed it, barely. Well, I'm not ready. I know, she heard Will say. That's why you're just observing. Triple opened her eyes to give Will a confused look. I am? He nodded, and while she could no longer get a sense in his emotions, his expression was serious. Triple, you haven't had any training whatsoever. We wouldn't trust you to hand us our plasma arms. All you're going to do is stay back with the ship and get a handle on how we operate in the field. Oh. Relieved, Triple relaxed back on the wall. She'd been worried about what her part in the operation would be, but there was still something nagging her. Who is the target? She blurted out, immediately regretting it. That wasn't something she would ask unless she knew the operation was an assassination. Brow furrowing, Will stiffened, his eyebrows scrunching together. Target? He said with casualness that didn't fit his posture or expression. Of the assassination, she prompted, blushing and trying to shrink into herself. It was too late to play innocent, so she may also try to get some answers. Will opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. He closed it again, cocking his head, and looked like he was thinking back to something. Probably trying to remember if he accidentally slipped anything about the assassination. That one is a bit confidential. You'll find out eventually, so just be patient, but I'm not going to reveal any details on that operation until the time is right. That one, Triple thought. Are we talking about two different things? Wait, she said, waving her hand frantically in front of her. I'm talking about this operation. Her eyebrows raised slightly. Triple, the operation we're currently doing isn't an assassination. What gave you that impression? She clapped her hand in front of her and put it in between her legs, squeezing them. I sort of eavesdropped on you and Jeffrey. Her head hung slightly as she braced for another outburst from Will. Telepathically or actually? Actually? She said uncertainly. Will looked impressed, giving her a slight nod. You're not mad? By the sources, no, he said with a chuckle, dismissing the notion with a wave. It's easy to overhear a shouting match in a freighter like this, and I would do the same in your position. I thought you might have read some of the crew's minds, and that's how you found out. Then we would have a problem. Did Serial not tell you we eavesdropped? Will shook his head, and her early anger toward Serial melted away. Thank you, she thought, wondering if, with her abilities, Serial might hear her. So, what is the operation we're going to? He took one more glance at the door before answering. I don't think I'll get in trouble for telling you now, but don't tell anyone I told you just in case. The operation is twofold. We're working with several other squads to raid a weapons factory, one with a large amount of Perder and Blight plasma arms. She started to ask a question, but he raised a hand to cut her off. And to answer your obvious question, plasma arms are classified by the type of plasma they shoot, and the plasma has a different color depending on the heat grade. A Perder is a plasma arm that can shoot the highest heat grade of plasma, which is purple, and Blight is just below Perder, shooting blue plasma. However, that is just a side benefit to our main mission. We and the other squads are going to serve as a distraction for a particular Angel of the Executor. Why do I recognize that name, she asked, almost to herself. They're mentioned somewhere in the files of the royal families I gave you. Some members of the royal families end up joining their ranks, as two spots in the Angels aren't held by specific people like the others. Aren't all roles technically held by specific people, she asked, the confusion in her question genuine despite the snark accompanying it. Most of the Angels are made up of immortals, except for two, who are just filled in by whoever is chosen, granted abilities by the Executor, the Soul Source. That's what I mean by not held by specific people. Triple frowned deeply. The Angels are immortal. That was a deeply concerning thing to learn, considering if underlings of the Sources could be immortal, what about them? Will's face scrunched up as he let out an annoyed grumble. They are thought of as immortal by everyone, but admittedly I missaid that. There are 7 angels, and disregarding the 2 mortal ones, he did air quotes in the word mortal, the others have been alive for centuries, and some since the beginning of the Ascending Territory's reign. We don't really understand 2 of them, but the other 3 we know full well what they're capable of. Will got out his screen and handed it to her, showing another series of images. There were of 3 figures, all wearing masks of varying design and loose clothing. The first was of a woman with pale skin and red eyes, her mask only covering half of her face. Her hair was purple and tied in a utilitarian ponytail, and she wore a black overcoat that was open at the front in most of the images. The second series was of someone in a metallic mask shade somewhat like a human skull, its lenses glowing red, and the rest of them covered in a large hooded cloak. The third and final series was another woman, judging by the medium-length blonde hair and slight breasts, and with a mask that looked like someone took a piece of metal and tried to hammer it into shape, the surface looking lumpy and dented, and oddly had only one lens, which glowed red like the previous figures. Unlike the other 2, she wore white, a long overcoat that looked almost like a robe with sleeves that looked a bit too long and wide, worn open at the front. Triple didn't miss that there weren't many images, and of those there, a majority were a tad blurry, especially of the last 2 figures. Those are the original Angels of the Executor, Cecile, Mark, and their leader, Vampra, considered demigods by many, and thought to be the immortal chosen of the Sources themselves, Will declocked with mock grandiose, somehow keeping his face straight. Until 2 centuries ago, where they got a bit more context to that thought to be immortal part. He added, his voice coming back to normal, thanks to an angel of our own. Trill couldn't help but giggle at the act. What did this angel reveal? The angel, our dear preeminent, is a quadruple host, you see. One of the 4 sets of abilities he has is that of a part soul host, specifically the same that our original angels appear to have. Wait a minute, Triple said, recalling one of their first conversations in the medical bay. You said you couldn't recognize my soul host DNA because you didn't have any soul hosts. She pointed at him accusingly. Will raised a finger. That is not what I said. I said we haven't had enough access to soul hosts to know what yours is, which is true, he said somewhat slowly, but not in a way that sounded condescending. The only thing we know is that your DNA isn't like that of preeminence, meaning you don't have the abilities of what we call soul consumers. Your soul host DNA gives you some other ability, which we don't know. She raised an eyebrow, but accepted the explanation. It seemed to check out with everything he said before. So, knowing these angels are soul consumers told you what exactly? A blissful smile grew on Will's face, the kind of he got whenever he talked about host abilities. Soul consumers have the ability to see and what Preeminent calls absorb souls. With those stored souls, you can consume them for power. One of the ways you can consume them is by slowing down your aging, which is how they've been able to live so long. Another way is toward their healing, which is how they've regrown whole limbs. This is not doing a good job of making me think they're not immortal, she commented. What, the grow your limbs part? You realize you can do the same, right, as a shapeshifter? Will said casually. Her eyebrows shot up, and she tried to resist the urge to stare at her hands. She failed, clenching and unclenching her hand in front of her, imagining it regrowing after being removed, her expression growing horrified at the imagery. The insufferable man smirked. Calm down, you look like you're seeing your soul leave your body. If it makes you feel better, your healing would take you weeks, while theirs would take minutes, seconds if they're so inclined. Her expression relaxed, as it did oddly make her not feel better, but less shocked. She had very little grasp on her abilities, and hearing just what she could do was still off-putting. Shaking her head, Triple thought to herself amusingly that she's probably the only person that ever felt relieved to hear she didn't have godly healing. So, where do they get all the souls they need? She said with a grimace, both for the question being stupid and knowing what the answer would be. Instead of an outburst of laughter, Will gave her a thin smile. I know what you're thinking, and no, that's not what they do. All living creatures have souls, and because of a life form with highly enhanced reproductive capabilities discovered in the 1st century, the angels have developed soul farms to restock at. Her expression relaxed, believed her guess to be wrong. Really? Will nodded. We even got our hands on a few and started our own farm. You have to be careful if you can't let their numbers get too high, but Preeminent needs to replenish his soul reserves every so often to keep his slowing age thing going, so it's not too much of a problem. Only annoyance is that it takes some time for their population to go back up. So they don't take souls from people. That made Will pause. They definitely take the souls of those they killed. Their souls are a lot bigger than the furry creatures they breed, and from what Preeminent has told us at least. And the Executor actually doesn't use the soul farms. Because he's naturally immortal? Will shook his head, and his eyes got a faraway look to them. No, he just has a different supply of souls. The Executor is the personal executioner of every prisoner in the Ascending Territory. They're all sent to him eventually for public execution, if they don't pay whatever their fine is. His voice had turned strained at the end there. Triple found herself numb to the news. These were, after all, the god who sent her to that hellhole of a planet. Now, the angel we're currently concerned with is Mark, the 2nd series of images. The main reason we're raiding the weapons factory is to get his attention. Confused for a moment, Triple remembered the reason they were talking about the angels. That's the main point of the operation? He nodded. We have a hidden contact to make sure it's Mark and not another of you 7 angels that's sent to take care of this. And while Mark is distracted by your forces, another squad will attach a special device onto his personal ship. What kind of device? Carol told you how we travel to other planets, yes? By bending space, yeah, she answered, now taking the sudden changes in topic in stride. It's often quicker to play along, and we'll always have a reason for bringing something else up. And with that method, it takes us hours to get from one planet to another. And yet, We've traveled to at least 3 different star systems since we've been on board. How do you suppose we were able to do that? Triple's brow furrowed. Will had shown her a star chart of the galaxy upon her asking what the ascending territory looked like, so she knew they'd been traveling in different systems, but she hadn't really thought about it further than that. She shook her head, finally raising her hands in defeat. I don't know. Will gave her a reassuring smile. Don't feel too bad. I didn't expect you to figure it out. I was more interested if this was something you got during your sleep. The way we get from one star system to another is through something called a hyperring. Moon-sized constructs in the shape of a ring. He tried to emphasize the scale with hand motions. These rings take the concept of bending space to an entirely new level, he continued, abandoning the gestures. How it works is that a starship will send a signal to the hyperring, transmitting which star system you want to go to. The hyperring then makes the space right in front of that ship bend to another hyperring in a different system, and in a split second, he snapped his fingers. You've traveled to another star system. Triple nodded. So, this is what makes our 18 fields look so unimpressive to Carol. So how does this device we were talking about relate to this? She went back. We want to track Mark's personal freighter. However, trackers can only tell us where he is when we're in the same star system as him. Making a tracker capable of telling us where he is from another star system would be too big to be inconspicuous. So, to get around that problem, the device is made to intercept the signal to the hyperring and tell us where he's heading to. And we want to notice why. Will pursed his lips. Mark is going to pick up something that we have invested interest in. But the tracker will know when you receive the package, and by using the tracker's self-destruct feature, damages each drive over a planet, grounding him long enough for a team to sneak in and get the package. And this package is, she prodded, raising an eyebrow. Not answering immediately, he said, we'll tell you after. I'd rather not give you any more pressure on your first operation. Crossed her arms, she reluctantly grumbled, fine. But why ground them? Wouldn't it be better to have them stranded in space? Will shook his head. We do that, Mark will call for assistance, and sneaking in won't be an option. On the ground, he'll be having his crew make repairs, and they'll be more spread out, so the squad heading in will have an easier time being undetected. Why do you have to sneak in? If you're stranded in space alone, just overwhelm him. Will gave her a sideways look. What? Let's just say, he said at last, his voice ice, be grateful you won't be participating in this operation to see just what a soul consumer can do. He let those words hang there, and a part of her wondered what exactly he had seen to send chills up her spine. So, I'm just staying with the ship? Nothing else, she asked, aware of one thing she and Will had not brought up. The test? Will nodded, his face giving away no clue that he was lying, and again, she couldn't sense anything from him. It made her wonder how many times Will had lied to her face, without any sign for her to tell. Stop it. Maybe there's a good reason why he isn't telling me. Then what was that test you and Jeffrey spoke of, she said tentatively. Will raised an eyebrow, looking unsurprised by the question. So, you were there for that part. Well, you'll find out. If I told you, it wouldn't be much of a test. Her brows knit together. You're not willing to tell me, even though if I fail, you'll be sent away as well. He nodded, his eyes burrowing into her. While I don't like how Jeffrey's partially doing this out of spite, everything he said was correct. You're going to take this test eventually. I just wanted you to have more time. This test, however, is important to take, and I will not give you any hints that might compromise its effectiveness. His tone made it clear that this wasn't up for debate, so Triple let it drop. She hadn't expected him to tell her anyway, but she didn't see any reason not to ask. Will suddenly snapped his head to the side, looking at the door. A moment later, the door opened, revealing Uriel. She stepped inside, and Triple, for the first time, noticed that Uriel didn't have a shadow underneath her. If anything, the spot underneath her looked a smidge brighter. Armbands, she ordered, extending her hand out. Her arm, noticeable down at Triple was looking, didn't have an armband. We've reached? Will asked. Uriel nodded. Armbands? Will slid his armband off and handed it to her, nodding for Triple to do the same. When she had both of theirs, Ribble left with a slight nod. What's happening? She realized the answer before she even finished the question. It looks like the operation's happening earlier than expected. Come on, now you get to see how the revolutionaries work. Thoughts, concerns, complaints?
I noticed a lot of eyebrows being raised, like it was like it's Groucho Marx.
Yes, unfortunately, I can't keep falling back to that one. I don't know any other way to get that particular emotion across.
I did like the technicals. Like, I did like the way you described how things work, though. Like, what the technicalities were behind it. That was kind of nice.
Yeah, you did a
Thank
good
you.
job of describing how each thing works in a way that wasn't like
Bearing or overwhelming.
Okay, that's good. I'm admittedly paranoid. I will be overbearing with these.
No, no, it had a nice flow to it. I will give you that.
Yeah, yeah, that seemed okay. Sorry, I forgot to mute myself earlier. Hopefully, no one heard anything from me from over here.
It was fine.
Good, good. Yeah, I like yeah, I like the dialogue, the relations. Yeah, I mean, people did raise eyebrows a bit, but still, it's fine.
Yeah, I'll just look for something else that can express that. I'm currently just dependent on the fucking master list.
Yeah, that's not a big deal. And I did notice a bit of world building. Unfortunately I was away, like AFK, but I did hear some interesting world building ish stuff. With like prophecies or something involved.
There's not prophecies, no.
Okay, but there was something. I heard something about angels and things. It sounded interesting.
Angels of the Executor. They're a death squad.
Yeah,
I think
that's
it's
lovely.
like they're like Charlie's Angels, but more metal.
Yeah, more golfish.
I
Yeah,
suppose,
less whiny.
and less quality less bad quality, questionable quality written.
Yeah, well, I never watched Charlie's Angels, but it sounded.
Also, there's a male in the squad, so definitely not Charlie's Angels.
From what I understand, every single Charlie's Angel movie that has ever come out has been bad.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, they've been around for a while, but I don't think I ever watched them.
I don't think you really need to.
Maybe once.
Also, thank you, Becca. That's nice to hear.
Is
And
the
I'm responding to all 3 of your compliments. And also your comment.
is the eyebrow raising more meant to be an amused expression or surprised?
Not surprised. Well, sometimes surprised. It's
Annoyed?
textual. I would say, yeah, it does fit better with amused. More
So
like,
or they were like annoyed sometimes. I thought they seemed like they were annoyed sometimes because there was a bit of there's a bit of conflict going on.
I don't remember if there's a specific annoyed eyebrow raise in this, because one, I've used it too much, and I see, honestly, eyebrow raises for me are kind of like multi-purpose almost, because I feel like they fit in so well with so many different emotions. Annoyance, amusement, interest.
Yeah, I have characters that roll eyes a fair amount.
I mean, you could also do maybe like a small smirk or rolling eyes, or maybe even have a short glare.
Yeah. I'll make note of that.
It
is something I'm very obvious.
I did like the combination of technology and otherworldly power, I'm guessing.
What are you referencing specifically?
With how souls work, and apparently there's I'm kind of jumping into this, so I don't have the best idea, but there seemed to be like a sort of a extra dimensional kind of power going on, kind of magic system.
There's definitely a magic system, yes.
I'm just saying that I like the the combination of technology and otherworldly power to it.
Okay, because honestly, this is fairly light when it comes to my magic and technology mixing together. So I was like, did I make something too obvious?
Well, I'm interested to see how this is going to go. To say the least.
Yeah, next two chapters are the actual operation, and I get to flex my muscles in the other one because I have a fight scene which I've been trying to prepare for a long time. It's a very short fight scene, but I wanted to make sure it was like perfect.
Alrighty then. So this is actually going to be from the one of my current drafts. It's the second Dragon Strife is the title of the book. It's going to be a direct sequel to Battle of the Seven Suns, which just barely came out. You can find that on Amazon and Kindle. Kindle both in paperback and hardback. But this is very much the children of the previous characters kind of interacting with the world around them and trying to kind of work with the power structures that have been put in place. And I kind of just decided that this week, this is going to be just to kind of show, this is kind of just my, one of the introductions to one of my villains and kind of how he thinks and his personal mindset on things. So I'll start. Erithia swarmed with the usual bustle. Stable hands taking care of horses, cooks to the bottom of the fortress, smiths working on other either weapons or practical ironworks. All in all, the antithesis of stillness. All save for one spot. Shard Dragonless stood in his private map room, examining a map of the Dragon Empire, resting his hand on Dark Fate's hilt. He knew what his colloquial nickname was. He wore it with pride. He didn't need a giant fire-breathing lizard to give him greatness. Those creatures were a crutch, a free gift given by fate rather than any worthiness on their part. Althea was his alone, especially since Camria had gotten her dragon. "Why are you thinking so much, little brother?" Camria asked as she stood across him on the map table. "Why don't we go grading? Leave this boring map room for another time." Despite being siblings, Shard and his older sister were very different people. She was blessed with the silver hair of Magar's line with a more rounded face, while he had dark hair and an angular face, showing his descent from Arian's line. "If you could see the future that I see, I doubt that you would find this boring," Shard said calmly, resting his hand beside his head and using his other hand to brace his elbow. "The moment in history that comes along only once every few decades is about to arrive. We need to prepare for it." "Little brother, you need to lighten up." Camria laughed airily. "You're so serious since I got Sir Sebra. Erberon. We don't get to do much together. You're holed up in here most of the day." Running his eyes over the Parthian section of the map, Shard couldn't help a little bit of distraction from entering his voice. There's a limited amount of time before this great gathering, council, or whatever it was called. He needed to be ready to put himself into the best possible position for this. However, he had to figure out the precise alliances that needed to occur in order to make this happen. "I made the fact that I'm very happy for you quite clear." Shard rested his fingers on his jaw, eyes flicking to his sister and then back to the map. "However, there are things more important than my enjoyment." "Well, there aren't." Camria shook her head disparaging. and turned toward the door. All right, fine. If you're going to be a wet blanket, I'll just fight ice Cerberon around the castle. Sounds like an excellent idea, Shard agreed, still focused on the map. You need to get a mistress or something, Cambria remarked, clearly attempting to get a rise out of him. I'd rather not risk entanglements of that nature, Shard said dryly, eyes not leaving his object of study. The sound of the door closing behind his sister didn't break his concentration. Instead, he started walking around the map, mind working through possibilities. History has shown that Ruin and Althea coming together proved to be one of the factors in the effectiveness of the Dragon Strife. However, I don't want the Empire to fracture. The current system benefits me quite a bit more. However, I need to maneuver in the system in order to ensure that I get what I want. He moved his hand away from his face and placed both of them on the table. It will be doubly stupid to involve myself with Ruin at the moment, since Natriana only has sex on her mind. By all accounts, she's not the power in Ruin. It's the ruling noble council, some of whom should be at this gathering. Slowly a plan began forming as his eyes drifted down to Parthia, Ulbar, and Harag. I am intrigued by this possibility. Talking to himself helped Shard to figure out things, though he kept that limited to when he was alone. Let someone know what you were thinking, especially in a political discussion, would be a fatal error. He made a circle with his finger on Min and Drakkar and Cameline, the two central hubs of Dragonlord power. Currently, there exists a perfect opportunity for pincer movement. Shard tapped his fingers against Harag and Parthia. If I can create an alliance between in Althea and Harag, Ulbar, or Parthia, the balance of power would shift. Cardolan was gone, destroyed by Mariel Dragon's Bane and Thanatos in her fury over the death of her father and the destruction of her army. Althea was quite unique in terms of the fact that they had little in terms of mineral deposits, but they had excellent horse flesh to trade, as well as providing a straightforward trade route toward the deep mines. After winning the war and several years of peace, Althea was now very wealthy. But Mariah the Shade and Aborn the Dissenter had given them something of a bad reputation. It seemed like my options are mainly going to be Parthia, Ulbar, and Harag. Shard drew Dark Fate and laid it on the table, letting the light of the torches play over the smoky blade. I'm intrigued to see how this plays out. I need to use this advantage well. If Tiri is single, but she does have a brother, if I can arrange something. He leaned forward so he could see his face reflected in the blade. Princess Arena is single, but that is likely beyond my reach. It would serve, though. She's close to the throne, close enough to the throne that I can gain some power to it, but not so close as to arouse jealousy in the other nobility, though our connection from when we were younger might still be intact. I hope that the time where I pummeled her brother in the practice yard won't be held against me. Reverently, he ran his hand along the sword's blade, then nodded slowly. What was it Father always said? It's better to burn out gloriously than to fade away into obscurity. Well, I don't intend to fade away, but I don't intend to burn out either. I will leave a lasting mark on the histories that will never be forgotten. The arrivals for the Grand Council came thick and fast. Dark-skinned Parthians from the far south, brown men and women from eastern Sitharis, tan-tattooed Ulbarans with symbols on their arms showing what noble family they originated from. Runish embassies with a mixture of skin tones, with light-skinned Numenor Aryans and Altheans forming the majority of the guests due to their proximity to Minan Drakkar. The first ones to arrive were the Ulbarans, by at least a couple days before everyone else, which was surprising considering the fact that there were closer places like Camelane, but they arrived just afterward. Lady Amalisa was very pretty, graced with a bright smile and pleasant curve, but Bale was happy with Shelia as his one and only wife. For whatever reason, as she came down to the docks, Shelia greeted the silver-haired woman like a sister, which made the younger woman smile and surprised pleasure at the warm welcome. Bale greeted her as well, but felt somewhat awkward considering that extremely unpleasant conversation that had happened before this grand council. How could she bring up that old tradition? He wondered, shaking his head. Bale knew something was up when his wife began talking to the Lady Emily Issa like they'd known each other for years, personally escorting her to her rooms along with the rest knew. He didn't know why his mother had decided to call for this grand meeting, but it seems like Shaleed was doing something here. If she wanted to chat politics, who was he to stop her? Besides, he had slightly more pressing matters on his mind. The next guest that arrived was warmly received by Chimera and her family, but Bale couldn't help but feel a shudder. Shard looked like a lean, hungry fox, almost colorless eyes, quietly examining everything around him with a cold, calculated meticulousness. The wind blowing around the tower ruffled his black hair as he surveyed the tower. "Well, Chimera," he remarked as he gave Bale's sister a hug, then her husband, "has that uppity brother of yours learned some sword skills, or is he some of the same yappy pup I kicked down?" Bale flushed while Chimera guffawed with laughter, her grin pointing at the scar running across her eye. Talon and his brothers chuckled, even though his sisters had the grace to look embarrassed. Grimacing, Bale kept himself from yelling, despite the complete jackasses that his twin sisters had spawned, braying like the donkeys they were. Instead, he grinned. "It's so nice to hear these mewling virgins have the maturity to recognize a well-done jest, Shard," he remarked, letting his grin widen the abrupt silence. Shard tilted his head slightly, then chuckled. "Well put, Bale." He inclined his head slightly. "You've at least gained some smarts. My congratulations. Though I hope that you stay where you belong." "Do you now?" Bale asked, resting his hand on Silver Queen's hilt. "Yes." Shard extended his hand. "I've already proven I'm better than you, so I have nothing to prove." Bale was so taken aback by the comment he had nothing to say other than take the hand. Pale eyes impassive, Shard patted Bale's shoulder and walked away. "I'm sorry about my brother, Amria said quickly, obviously trying to mend fences. "He's always like that." "I know." Bale flexed his hands, glaring after his longtime enemy. "One day I'll beat him." Chimera laughed and motioned her boys and her husband to follow her. "You might as well attempt to stop the tide, brother," she remarked, stroking Darkfire's hilt suggestively as she walked away. Grimacing, Bale considered combat, then decided the best option would be simply to take it and move on. Chimera chuckled as she walked next to Shard. "That was impressive," she remarked approvingly. "You put my brother down as easily as a pup." Instead of smiling like she expected him to, Shard just shrugged and adjusted his black moleskin gloves. "He's gotten some wit in the past few years, so I wouldn't count him out." Chimera waved a dismissive hand. "I have Darkfire, and my mother dies, I'll have the throne and Meraxia," she scoffed. I'll be the next Dragon Lord. That's all but guaranteed." "What assurances have you received?" Shard asked, cold, pale eyes seeming to analyze every word out of her mouth. "If you're going to be the Dragon Lord, I imagine you would have some measure of leverage in this grand council that would allow you to ensure your position. What the hell is he talking about? Chimera's mind raced, quickly going through possibilities. Something is going on, and he's aware of it. I'm going to be the next Dragon Lord. I'm the oldest child. Else, she hissed. Not the rumor I've heard. Shard clasped his hands behind his back. Based on the preparations, the fact that all of the major families are here, that means that rather than law or her arbitrary decision, it's going to be by popular vote. That's sacrilege to everything we believe in. Chimera grabbed his arm. We can't put the decision to of who should rule in the hands of lesser men and women. Most of them have some drop of Aemon's blood at this point. Shard shrugged dismissively. But we have the pure blood of the dragon, she hissed. My mother's victory over Sitharis proves that. We have the real power in all this. Perhaps. Shard examined his fingernails, a general air of skepticism about him. Clearly, he didn't believe that particular story, despite the witnesses. He just believed that reinforcements had been what won the Battle of the Seven Suns through normal means. What do you believe in? Chimera demanded, more frustrated than curious. Myself, Shard said bluntly. Surprised, Chimera blinked, then smiled. Well, better than anything esoteric, I suppose. So, Shard put his hands behind his back. In exchange for my support, what do you offer? I will be Dragon Lord, Chimera insisted, even if it means beating them into submission. That won't work. Shard raised his hand and examined his fingernails, or at least as close as you could with calfskin gloves covering your hands. People don't generally respond to threats, especially when they are ostensibly your allies. They owe me their allegiance, Chimera growled. Nobody is owed anything. Unless you do something for another person, and even then, the likelihood of you getting something is 50-50, unless you apply pressures that might make things unpleasant. Shard's voice was annoyingly calm as he continued his meticulous survey of his fingers. I can begin swinging things your way, but I want something in return. Chimera clenched her fists, then forced herself to calm down. What will you do, and what do you want? What I will do is provide bribes, make arrangements of marriage, that sort of thing. Shard shrugged as if it was no matter. The main thing that is needed now is to swing the southern provinces to our way of thinking. At the moment, who is going to vote for your little brother? Nobody. There is nobody who would want to support him, she growled. Who are his friends? Shard pressed. I've been away from the capital for a while. Who are your brother's friends? And who your brother's friends are isn't exactly apparent from Althea. Chimera thought for a moment, racking her brains for who her weakling brother could be friends with. He spent a lot of time in the time south due to Mother's time as governor of Sitharis, so Parthia and Harag might vote for him. So we moved Parthia and Sitharis to our side of the board, Shard said casually. Parthia would likely have a few openings in terms of marriage alliances. One of your sons or my sister might be a good match for either Nepturi or her brother Ferric, depending on how hard she bargains. Or Sitharis is very, very vulnerable to bribes. Now that their entire population is entirely made up of colonists trying to start up their economy. So that much I'm willing to provide. And all these favors and money will come at the price of... Chimera rotated her finger encouragingly. Shard halted his examination and looked up, cold eyes very focused. The haggling that will require a favor at a time of my choosing. He rubbed his fingers together suggestively. The money that will require a bit more. I will give you anything, Chimera promised. There might be certain blockages to advancements that I could make toward your younger sister. Shard's voice was disturbingly impassive considering the subject matter. When they come up, you will remove them. In fact, I would appreciate it if the courtship was encouraged. Seems small enough, Chimera nodded. Fine, I'll do it. I will require a contract in writing, signed and sealed, just so we don't have to have any misunderstandings. Shard lowered his hands, calfskin gloves shimmering. I'll write that up just so that we can ensure things go smoothly. Very well. Chimera nodded and offered her hand. All right. Until then, shake on it. Slowly, Shard took her hand and squeezed it. It was a very strong grip, almost as firm with her as hers. Let it be done. And that will conclude things.
Well, I saw a title drop.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Oh, that was too subtle for me though.
Battle of the Seven Sons.
Yes, I know.
I'm at the Dragon Lord part.
Yeah, true.
Are they going to sign the contract the same way that Tarek's contract did?
In
Cuts
blood.
Of course, it has to be in blood. It doesn't count unless it's in blood. At the very least,
Exactly.
What kind of blood? Does it have to be human?
of course.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to do that. I think that Shard isn't a cult like that. He is a little bit of a jerk, but my hope is that he's a refined jerk. Or who is highly intelligent. And it doesn't seem like too contrived that he is extremely intelligent.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Yeah.
Just a question. How old are Shard and Shimmer?
Chimera?
Chimera is late 30s. 30s, he's about 33.
Oh, so the beginning was a flashback to when they were
No.
kids.
No.
That was Shard and Camry. That was someone else, right?
Oh,
Camry is like 35. Camry is 35. She's a little bit older than Shard. She's just a valley girl.
Okay, so they're all grown-ups then.
Yeah. Most of the people in this story are like at the youngest or well, there's some kids, but most of like all of the adults are like late 20s, and he's at the latest, as opposed to like young kids.
You mean at the earliest, right?
Yeah, at the youngest. Sorry.
Oh no,
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, but it's kind of just shut. Yeah, it's just that her his sister's kind of a bimbo a little bit, and he's kind of running the day to day.
Yep. Brightness Becca says, "Edgy contract signer and go home." Yeah.
I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not gonna say anything. Okay. Cool. Any thoughts, questions, concerns?
Nope, nothing I got.
Alrighty. Cool.
So Bale, what happens to him afterwards?
Bale? Uh, what? I didn't say anything.
Does it get swept up by a gale of wind?
Actually, that's actually not inaccurate. That's a good prediction, actually. It's basically Robinson Crusoe with dragons and a bunch of other people.
But it's too easy to get off the island if you have dragons, unless they don't have wings.
Pretty far away from shore.
Yeah, but still, you could do it.
Perhaps.
You've seen Game of Thrones. You know that a dragon just goes like that.
Yeah, dragons have light speed, apparently. Yeah.
Well, so do humans, to be fair.
And ships. And Littlefingers and Varys seem to have these amazingly great jetpacks.
Yes.
Well, we need to, you know what? We need to do Remarkable Republicans videos on Game of Thrones. And
Oh,
they're just
no.
like, hilariously
Oh, no.
bad.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Help! Please no!
That's, you know what? That's actually the reaction that Neff has every time Maggie Mae Fish is mentioned. Yeah. Character arcs with a K. Oh man, I'm so excited for that. We'll have to do that at some point. Maybe we'll do that Monday. I'm not 100% sure. I know that this Sunday, me, Tarek, and Skids are talking about Transformers: Age of Extinction.
Wait, I thought we were doing it tomorrow night.
No. Skids actually asked if we could do it Sunday.
All right, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we're doing that on Monday, let me know in advance so I can schedule for that.
So that you can and as well as mentally prepare yourself.
Yeah, I think I'll need to do some fasting and prayer and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, probably a lot of mental and physical preparation. Becca, if you want to come on, I think that would be fun. I need as many Game of Thrones experts as I can. Admittedly,
don't say that.
Admittedly, Remarkable Republican's a troll. It's most of what he says is fake, but it's kind of amusing in terms of his fakeness. But we will call it good there. Everybody, stay cool, and we will see you on the next Extreme Team show.
Have a riot.